Yeah. Then we have Dr. He's an orthopedic trauma surgeon in Ethiopia, and he's also the program director at Abbott Hospital, which is the trauma center in Ethiopia. And if you watch our documentary, it's a trauma center that's featured in our documentary. We have who's our chief operating officer for the United States. She's an orthopedic trauma nurse, and she also is the nurse that works with me in the operating room here at KU. So you'll get to see here if you work or if you come into my operating room. So what are we talking about? Why did we choose that? Well, there is this study that came out of Ethiopia looking at trauma from 1990 to 2017. And what that study determined was in Ethiopia, and this is just from last lecture, but just to highlight, this is a heat map, and this heat map shows where the workplace fatality rates occur throughout the world in the greatest concentration. The higher the concentration, the more red the area is. And you can see that Africa here is the continent that has the highest workplace-related fatality throughout the globe.
They can't hear.
Got it. So, and this is just road traffic mortality rates. Another heat map. This comes from the World Health Organization. And you can see that a lot of road traffic mortality. Why is that? Why is that? And why do transportation systems matter? Why do they matter? If you think about the importance of transportation systems, in any country or empire that's had any amount of influence, you have to have a good transportation network, right? But if a transportation network isn't done right, it can cause problems. If a transportation network is done right, what does it foster? Well, it fosters economic opportunity. If you think about it, if you were to travel to school, get a good transportation network to that school, education. A lot of people, you're able to have a job, and you're able to have a job because there's a safe transportation network. You can get on in the morning, travel to your job. So if you have a good transportation network, it can foster long-term economic growth. It fosters opportunities in education, medical services. If you think about it, if you have a good transportation network, people from rural areas that don't have access to good medical care can get in and receive good medical care. So, and it can help transport goods and improve quality of life. So a good transportation network is really necessary if you think about it, in any society. If you want to have a good society that has opportunities for everybody. So we have a problem, and we know this in lower middle income countries throughout the world, and it's most concentrated in Africa with respect to trauma-related injuries. And if you want to create change, because we've been talking about principles in each lecture, principles that we talked about in the last lecture, and there's a principle that I want to bring about or bring to the forefront in this lecture today that to this problem, but I can guarantee you each change requires highlighting the problem actually, and that fixing this problem is an investment, not a cost, right? When you go into a hospital, just your own hospital, and there's some particular issue that you are seeing affecting the health of patients, I can almost guarantee you, when you go to request that resource to help mitigate that problem, you're going to be hit with a response of, this is how much it costs. And you need to turn the tables, right? With the language and say, we're not talking about a cost here. We're talking about an investment for our patients. And here we're talking about an investment for our society. So we've got a problem with investment. If designed well, transport facilitates access to opportunities, education, medical services, and students, right? And improves overall quality of life. But if not designed well, what can transportation more cost to society than a benefit, with it merely serving as a means to strip the local population of its resources while simultaneously adding death and disability. As we go. That last statement is more because it kind of gets towards justice, fairness, and equity. Why I say that as we go through this a little bit further. So this is a picture I took when I was in Rome in 2016, and you'll see this is the Colosseum here, very well constructed, constructed over 1,000 years ago. Part of it's still standing, and this is a Roman road. The Roman Empire was able to achieve a lot of its success and it was known for its roads. They were very well constructed. And this road, one thing the person that was taking me on the tour pointed out to me, she said, in some respects, this road is made better than our own roads today. It's still functioning over 1,000 years later. So, but there was a lot. Think about the machinery they had back then. There was a lot of detail put into how they made this. All right. So, why are there? This is a driving lesson that one of our first fellows, Dr. Solomon, gave me when we were traveling through Ethiopia. Let's play this for you. You guys can listen.
Dr. Solomon, what's it like driving in Ethiopia?
Wow, very difficult driving, but you have to be cautious and fast, very fast, because you see a lot of car coming and the people are also going here and there. Look.
Yeah. Are there no crosswalks?
Yeah,
There's a crosswalk.
there is a crosswalk, but they don't follow the principle of traffic. Simply they came and they challenge you. Yeah, interesting.
What about stoplights?
Oh, stoplight. No stoplight at all here.
Stop signs?
You see, I haven't seen here.
You haven't seen a stop sign
I
here?
haven't seen. Have you seen here?
What about a yield? Is there a yield sign?
Yield also. Here is not available. I don't know. The stop sign is removed by sometimes by hooligans.
Hooligans, right?
Yeah, remove the stop sign. They remove it and they sell it. This one, roundabout.
What about speed limit signs? Are there speed limit signs?
Now I am driving less than 20, you see? Even not 20, no, 15. Look, the guy is in front of us.
Yeah, he's got to move quick. He's got to dodge.
He is dancing.
He is. Huh? No speed limit sign, no stop sign, no yield sign.
No stop sign. So this is the problem of the car accidents are very high in Italy.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, that's why we see,
Yeah.
like that 10-year-old girl who got struck by a car.
Yeah.
See, they challenge, that is good. They're challenging
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
They want to, it's kind of, everything here is a game of.
But now here is a little bit, there is 40, the speed should be 40 here.
That's 40. That should be 40.
But
Through here.
we are going with 10.
Okay. Yeah. And there's a taxi.
Yeah,
And
taxi
there's a
stopping,
bus.
the bus.
Yeah. So all those people are waiting for
Yeah.
the bus. These gentlemen, yeah, that's
No,
how you just
people-
walk.
yeah, look the people are.
Yeah. Well, I noticed that you walk on the roads here because
Yeah, look the people. Yeah.
there can even be a sidewalk,
Yeah.
but people still walk on the road.
Walking in front of you. Without any problem.
Yeah.
So you have to look.
They run. Yeah.
Ah! You have to take care.
It takes a
Yeah.
special talent.
Just we arrived the hotel here.
But you know what's interesting?
Soramba Hotel, this one.
Okay, this one.
Okay, it's not. Nicole, I'm just curious, as a road safety expert, was there anything that jumped out to you there?
I mean, the interaction between pedestrians
Yes.
was super vulnerable in vehicles. I will say though, the low speeds is doing them a favor. And we talk about that later a little bit, the relationship between speed and survivability. But
You're so smart. You know, if you get a chance to talk to her, it's amazing how much goes into road safety. And what she picked out there was, you said, what was the first
the
thing?
interaction between vulnerable pedestrians and the vehicle.
Did you know that the number one cause of death due to a road traffic accident is a car versus a pedestrian? In Africa, that's what it is. That's what she picked it out. I mean, that the number one reason why people are dying due to road traffic accidents in Africa, it's pedestrians being hit. And that's what it is. You see a lot of vulnerable pedestrians. Yeah. All right. So why is there so much road traffic mortality and morbidity in Africa? And this is a picture sent by Dr. Kenda, who's from Zambia. But even when it comes to work-related injuries, most work-related injuries are associated with travel. So, because what you see here is a lot of these people are traveling to work. You know, here are people, you can see, you know, they will pile as many people as they can into a vehicle. They're going to their place of employment. And Patrick, feel free to jump in at any point. But one thing that Dr. Kendall always would tell me is when you see people in that vehicle there, they're going to work because if they don't go to work that day, they won't have enough money to eat. Every day they have to go to work because the money that they get for that day sustains them for that day. If they miss a day of work, they're not eating that day. So they have to get on these vehicles because you would think, well, why even get on that vehicle? It looks so, you know, treacherous. But there's a reason why, because they have to work. 9 out of 10 deaths throughout the world, 9 out of 10 deaths that occur due to road traffic accidents occur in low to middle income countries. We don't see a lot of it here because we have safe systems and we've got a medical system that can handle them. But 9 out of 10 deaths are occurring in these low to middle income countries, and the majority of them could be prevented by just simple measures. So the next people that get killed in road traffic accidents are occupants typically, and that, if you think about it, these are the occupants, right? These people in the truck, you know, that after pedestrians, it's occupants, and it's typically because there's overcrowding in these vehicles. All right, why is there so much work-related death and disability? What are the factors driving these injuries? Well, here's an example of this. You can see some children working in a mine. So you have child labor occurring. And how skilled do you think a child is at digging diamonds or, you know, platinum or gold out? But that's, and you can see they don't have much personal protective equipment here. Here's some individuals working on scaffolding in Ethiopia. I think Bakker took this picture while we were in Ethiopia. And I'll just play this here. This is just
These
me
are working.
in my hotel, and it's just
Right,
showing some people
highway.
working on the side of the road here.
Yeah.
And if somebody's working on the highway in America, there's
I mean, if you
some
look
type
at
of
this, these
safety,
are hardworking people.
barricade put up. But this is how
with it.
these people work.
All these risks for injuries,
Right?
you can see why their trauma centers
So-
are so busy.
So you
Otherwise,
can
so many
see if you look at this why work-related
sustained
injuries are so high.
such crippling disease. See, they're having to beat the dogs away with a stick.
Statistics. So when polled construction workers in Ethiopia in one study, when they looked at their risk of a work-related injury, 84% of construction workers in Ethiopia had a work-related injury. 84%. High, right? So why is this? So progress, if not thought out, can come at a heavy price. One of the things we mentioned at our last lecture was we talked about what is driving this trauma epidemic. And there's this process called chaotic industrialization. And that is a process where you have certain industries being built up at an uneven rate. If you have a continent like Africa that's rich in natural resources, particularly rich in resources that we want now for developing renewable energy technologies, as well as just powering our old technologies, such as copper. So you have a continent that's rich in resources, and richer nations want these resources. If we need to get them out, roads need to be built that connect to these mines. And these mines, there's nobody that's necessarily looking over these mines and making sure they're safe. So you have this process where you have industry in mining and industry and transportation being built up quickly, not necessarily well thought out. We'll discuss that a little bit. And the healthcare infrastructure isn't being built up as well. And this just is a graph that shows what's happened in particular in Ethiopia, from 1996 to 2018. If you look at 2007 up to about 2018, they more than doubled their roadway length. And then if you look at below here, this comes from a UN road safety report on Ethiopia, and it looks at the number of road traffic fatalities during that same period of time, and you can see it's just a linear increase. But the important thing to note is that these numbers are much higher because number one, the method of them quantifying who has sustained a life-threatening injury or disability from a road traffic accident isn't recorded very well in Ethiopia or throughout Africa. So we just don't even know if we're getting the right numbers. But even at their low numbers, they still account for the highest concentration of traffic deaths throughout the world. So, dispelling myths. Just design good roads and traffic mortality will go away. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole, and she's going to speak a little bit about this. But is that all it is, Nicole? Is it we just simply design a safe roadway, and that will solve this mortality issue?
No. So there's statistics looking at what causes our fatal crashes, and 93 to 94% of them have some form of driver error being one of the causes, one of the contributing factors. Sometimes it's the vehicle and the roadway as well, but driver behavior is a big portion of that. So we can design our roads as safe as we can. Humans are still going to make mistakes, and they're not always going to drive. Not everyone drives the speed limit. If you drive on an interstate or pretty much any road, you will know. If you're driving the speed limit, you are way behind everyone else, and you're almost in most cases causing more of a safety issue than if you were speeding.
And one thing I like about this slide here, this is something I went over with Nicole, and it's called the safe system approach. And I think what this highlights is it highlights how you have not just developing a road, but it's developing a system in government that makes sure that people are educated on how to appropriately traverse roads. People are educated on how to safely drive. You have a law enforcement presence built up that can enforce the laws. So one thing you pointed out to me was a safe system approach for a transportation network, you have to have safe road users, right? You have to have safe vehicles. So you have to have a government system that can, make sure that the vehicles that are on the road are safe, safe speeds, safe roads, and you have to have post-crash care. That's us, right? We're the post-crash care, the healthcare providers. All these things have to be built up. It's not just one thing, but as you go through this, what's really been built up is roads. It's what's occurring in a lot of these low-income countries is you don't have the safe system approach. You don't have post-crash care. You don't have, did you see safe road users? I mean, even if you have safe road users, they're forced to drive kind of in an unsafe fashion, right? Do you have safe vehicles? You saw a lot of unsafe vehicles. Do you have safe speeds? That's not enforced. So all you have is roads being built. Is it any wonder, that 9 out of 10 deaths occur in low to middle income countries? So, so what about, did you want to talk about this a little bit?
So this was a hierarchy that was developed to help with that safe roads piece, because even in the US, we design roads and they're not always the safest option. So this is helping practitioners. So the safe system approach was developed probably within the last decade, that we've kind of shifted our mentality and our approach towards safety on our roads. We stole a lot of principles from like Sweden and Australia, who have really shown reductions in fatal crashes. And so to help with applying this approach, because even in the transportation industry, they're like, this is great, how do I use it? So Federal Highway developed, I believe last year, the year before, what's called the Safe System Road Design Hierarchy. And they kind of stole this from actually occupational health. And so this is just different ways you can target road safety. So the first is just trying to remove those severe conflicts. So trying to remove areas where you're going to have pedestrians and vehicles interact. So having bike lanes or making sure you have sidewalk and crosswalks for pedestrians. And intersections, trying to design your intersection so it has less conflicts and less interactions between vehicles. If you're not able to do that, the next is to design to a safe speed. So there's different, depending on the type of crash you would expect on the road, there's different speeds you should design to. So your local roads where you have a lot of interaction with pedestrians, they are not able to survive as high of a speed crash as someone on an interstate. So our local roads we design to that 20 to 25 miles per hour, because if you're hit at 20 to 25 miles per hour, you stand a 10% chance of surviving that crash. Where on the interstate, our major crash, or I guess it's 10% of not surviving that crash. I take that back.
Yeah.
Sorry. Like the lady said, like I said something wrong.
Yeah.
10% chance of perishing in that crash. So you have a 90% chance. Where on an interstate where a rear end or a side swipe's your biggest risk, because you have that access control, we call it with our ramps, you don't have at-grade intersections to turn on. You can survive a lot higher speed crash. So like 70 miles per hour tends to be that rear end speed, partially because of how safe we've designed our vehicles to absorb that energy with crumple zones. And then after that, the next option is to manage conflicts in time. So that we usually use traffic signals of some sort, or like the pedestrian hybrid beacons, or they're called rectangular rapid flashing beacons, the yellow flashing beacons you can push if you want to cross the road and get that driver's attention. And then the last is just increasing attentiveness and awareness. Again, our drivers aren't always paying attention to the road, and so doing what we can to increase that attentiveness and awareness, we do through that. So things like rumble strips, bigger signing, flashing lights, that sort of stuff.
So as you hear all this, and you hear how much is involved, and you're going to hear there's even more involved in making safe transportation systems. Some of you may be saying, why are we talking about this? I'm in medical school. I want to be a healthcare professional, but here's why. Here's why. There's a couple of reasons. Number one, if you do anything in trauma, you're going to have to be involved in the community and help to advocate for safe transportation systems, number one. But number two, when you're talking about building up healthcare to treat trauma in low to middle income countries, one of the first things I get struck with is you are not being proactive about this. The way you should address this is you should just help them develop safe roads, and we should not focus so much on their healthcare system. You'll have a bigger impact by developing safe roads. But my point of bringing all this out is, do you see how much is involved in this? You need good engineering companies. You need lots of capital. You need lots of money. You need to change the local culture. You have to change all of Addis Ababa's, philosophy in terms of how they walk around the street. That does not happen overnight. I can make a hospital quicker than that. I can just tell you that. And I'm not saying that you can make a hospital and mitigate all these problems, but I'm telling you, if you want to have an impact big and an impact quickly, you can do it by building a hospital. So anyway, some of it is built in response to this, and it's part of the package too. Part of the package of a safe road system is having a good post-crash response care. And you can't do that without building a hospital system. So
in transportation, one of the big things we talk about with post-crash care is there's a golden hour. So getting someone to a trauma facility within 1 hour increases their odds of surviving.
Yeah.
And so having the road network to do that, and then having also the facilities, hospital facilities,
100%.
to do that is, again, working together. It's a shared responsibility.
Well, what about this myth? Building roads is a pretty simple process.
I mean, building roads can be a simple process, but building a good road, there's a lot involved and a lot of trade-offs that are balanced on every roadway we do.
So, and Nicole gave me a really good presentation that it highlights of what it takes to design a safe road. And I've included some of them here. And I just wanted to kind of hit the highlights of this so you can see what is put into making a safe road. So let's just go through some of this. So safety, it begins at the very first start of thinking about anything, right? So these are the steps you go through when you're coming up with the transportation network, and you consider safety at the very beginning.
Yes. Or
Right.
you should.
Yeah.
It doesn't always happen, but in a perfect system, yes, we want safety to be considered in the beginning.
So because you pointed out to me, there's this project development process, and it starts with systems planning. It's like, we want to make a system, and then you ask yourself, how can we make it a safe system? And then it just permeates everything on down. So let's talk about some challenges of African roads. Okay. So there is probably one of the most dangerous roads in Kampala, Uganda. And this is just an example of some people driving down the road. People are sitting on the top of the roof here. This is 9 dead, 16 injured on a Masaka Kampala highway in Uganda. And I just want to point something out about this. Let's see if this will play.
I put this in my ears, and I haven't asked anyone to repeat themselves in over 3 months. This is magic. I wish I tried this before.
Okay. I don't think anybody would argue that these are bad roads. I'm going to jump ahead to one spot. So just watch this.
Surfaces, sharp rocks, and debris that will wreak havoc on your wheels and suspension. Vanzios Pass is notorious for crashes and breakdowns, and when you are stranded here, just forget it, because you'll be waiting for a very long time for assistance to turn up. Masaka Kampala Highway, Uganda. We've seen many roads given the label the world's most dangerous road over.
So you saw that road that had no pavement, and now we've gone to a road that has pavement. And did you hear what he said? It's notorious for being one of the most dangerous roads. What? Right? And just think about this. So it's you have to be so careful. Like if you're going into another culture, you're saying, man, you have a horrible road. We're going to lay down this road for you so you can get from one place, from point A to point B really quick, right? But you have to ask yourself, what's the impact of that?
Over the years, and Uganda's Masaka Kampala Highway is yet another road that fits the title. We can't say we disagree. More than 200 people have KO'd on this road in 2016 alone, and the figures for the years since then haven't been any better. Bolivia might claim to play host to the world's most notorious roads, but Masaka-Kampala Highway is slowly catching up to this title. The riddle with this road is not something you can tell just by looking at it, cause the road is well surfaced, mostly straight, and doesn't rise especially high or fall especially low. The Ugandan government claims that the majority of deaths that happen here are down to nothing more sinister than human error, but the numbers appear too high for that to be true. There is so much concern for this road such that a pastor attempted to exorcise the entire highway because he believed it was cursed, and the accidents were as a result of witchcraft.
A lot of witchcraft and a lot of sacrifice was done and the covenants made with these demonic powers.
So far his efforts
So, and road safety is culture too. I'm not saying anything against that gentleman there. I think they're trying to understand why there's so many deaths on that highway. When you look at that highway, I'm just curious, is there anything you see about it that looks unsafe to you?
Super stands out.
Yeah.
Potentially maybe just the road sides of like you have, it looks like a steep drop off and a mountain on the other side.
Yeah.
That would be the main things that stood out.
And we're going to talk about that. Yeah, I'll let you talk about that. So yeah, so let's look at this. So we'll just go through a couple things. So speed and survivability, you kind of talked about that, right? It's kind of obvious. The higher the speed, the more likely the mortality. And you know, so these are things that you want to take into account. What is this here? Minimum lane width.
So at least in the US, we have what are called controlling criteria. So any interstate, any road built with federal funds, as well as especially any interstates, have certain criteria they need to meet. If they can't meet that, then an agency has to prove to the federal government why they're not meeting that and that it's not going to cause a significant safety or operations issue. So lane width is one of those. And again, this lane width varies based off your roadway type. So on our interstates and freeways where people are going to be going faster, we want wider lanes. You don't want too wide, but you want wide enough. So 12 feet tends to be the standard on our interstates, and 10 to 12 feet for our arterial. So those are our higher speed roadways. They can be freeways, they can be roadways like Southwest Traffic Way up here might be considered an arterial. And so those you want a 10 to 12 foot width. Getting too narrow, you run the risk of people leaving their lane, getting into the opposing lane. Sometimes on local roads, though, we want that narrower lane to slow people down because they do feel cramped and you have that risk compensation that you inherently have that you will tend to drive down. So yeah, when we have narrower lane widths, we run the risk of, they're called run off the road crashes, where you leave your lane and go off the side of the road or into the opposing lane when you would have a head-on crash, as well as your side swipe crashes of hitting the vehicle next to you. And we have data that helps kind of show these and the association between crashes. So you can see on the top left, 4-lane undivided and a 2-lane undivided. So with 12-foot lanes, we'd expect, one crash basically. But if you compare that with an 8-foot lane, it goes up to about 1.3 times on our 2-lane undivided. You expect 1.3 times as many crashes in that case. And then we have another one down here for other widths. So there's a guide called the Highway Safety Manual we use when we evaluate different roadway design. And they have what are called safety performance functions, which are based off previous data that we have. And they show, again, that as you have that narrower lane width, you see that increase in crashes. And then when you get to about 12 feet, it kind of levels off in that case.
And not only does lane width matter,
yep.
Shoulder width matters.
Important part.
The horizontal curve radius matters, if you can imagine.
Curves tend to be one of our most dangerous. Curves and intersections are really where the majority of our fatal crashes happen. So a curve segment compared to a tangent segment, so a straight segment, you'd see about 3 times the fatal or fatality rate on a horizontal curve compared to.
And then the rotation or the super elevation rate?
Through curves, we get called super elevation to kind of help with that centripetal force and help keep you in your lane so you don't skid.
You have to think about stopping sight distance.
on our roadway. So again, just making sure you're able to see far enough ahead that if you come up on a slow vehicle or a pedestrian or an object in the road, or an intersection, even, that you're able to properly react.
And then you need to take that into account when you're talking about crest curves, like when you're going over a hill
Yeah, coming over a hill.
or going down.
Going down, especially at night, the down tends to be the biggest issue.
And then you have to think about grade. Of course, anybody who's driven through Colorado or a mountain knows how important that is when you're going down a big hill or mountain. Cross slopes. This was something I thought was interesting to help prevent hydroplaning.
So you get that water off.
So you get the water off the road. Yeah, they designed that.
You probably don't notice, but all the roads that you're riding on are slanted a little bit to either wherever the drainage system is.
And it reduces the road spray. Roadside safety, not only do they design the road itself, but then this I thought was so interesting, but the area outside the road is designed. So if you go out, you can possibly recover, or if you go out, it's not so steep that you flip. And if they can't meet that, then there needs to be some type of barrier there that's designed such that it can crumple when you hit it. There's so much thought that goes into a good road network, right? It's so, when I went through this with you, I thought, wow, this is so enlightening. Of course, we talk about cross points, roundabouts versus intersections, and the advantages of each of these, different ways you get onto the highway. All of this is well thought out. And then the things that are put in, I thought that was really good that you talked about, like rumble strips that can help. Rumble strips have kept me on the road, I will tell you that.
Keep people in their lanes, as well as when you have like an intersection that you aren't expecting, using those to draw that attention. Missouri uses them a lot in work zones because people aren't paying attention. They'll just drive into those cones otherwise.
And then the thoughtfulness that goes into signs, how large the signs are so people can read them. And then this was something I thought interesting. You said, if you just put this reflector around a stop sign, it can actually decrease crashes. Just that. Thoughtful, small addition.
Increasing attentiveness and awareness.
So, and then just to move into work-related injuries, these are from Dr. Kinda. Hey, Patrick, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, did you want to talk about these?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'll let you. This is Dr. Kinda. He's from Zambia. He's one of our former fellows. What would you like to say?
Okay, what I would like to say about this, there's this image, I think even the next one coming after this one. These are the one we call the artisanal miner, or we call them diggers. And they are often landless people who digs in the ground in the informal sector. And in this informal sector, that's where we find, they are there to find minerals, precious stones, and mainly in area where multinational companies also exploit resources. But the particularity for these ones means the living and working conditions are extremely difficult, and that they are marked by risk of fatal accident, lack of social security coverage, and irregular incomes dependent on harvests, and there's a middleman who fix the prices, and as well as the exploitation. Now, I want more to talk about the working and living condition of these people. You can see on this picture, this is one of the digger, and just behind him, that's a tunnel which they make themselves to go and look for precious stone. And the only things he have on him is just a torch on his head and nothing else for his protection. And even this tunnel, they are built with no rule of safety there inside. And what happened is the first problem you face here is the risk and security. And these diggers work in the informal sectors, as I said, and often in precarious conditions with high risk of landslide accident. And that's what happened often in this case one day. And these are spread all over in almost in all these provinces. We find mine, and most of people they live by doing this. And but I said these people, when they are doing this one, there's a lack of social rights. They don't have any social security coverage, and in case of any injury and trauma, they have to find a way to travel to a distance clinic. And in this clinic, where it is not even sure that they will find qualified people or adequate infrastructure to treat the problem. And remember, these mines are often in the rural area and where you can't even find qualified healthcare to take care of you. And they have to pay for their own medical care. And they live, as I said, they have got precarious income and dependency. Income are irregular as it depends on quantity and quality of the mineral they are going to harvest. And they are not even the one who will fix the price, but because the price is fixed by a middleman who generally those middlemen, they have got their own scale, which it's at those scale it's a rig scale, which they fix the price and they don't even give you the proper weight of what you are selling. And if all this condition here, in this picture, that's where they live. And they do this one, as I said.
So this is a mine, Patrick? Is this a mining area?
Yes, this is a mine, and you can see these sacks, that's where they put the mineral, which they
What
sell.
is that?
Okay, the main one is copper. And copper is the one we found in our batteries. And
Gotcha.
yes, and that's one of the common source of trauma in Africa here. And on this picture, these are motorbike, and we call them moto taxi. And motor taxi are widely used form of public transportation in DR Congo and in most of the African country. In Zambia, the majority of delivery company are now using also motorcycle in big city, and there's a study which target SARL did. That was a survey to interview 1,540 Congolese people between 20 and 30 November. And it was done in 6 major regions. And this research, you can see like on this slide, these are transportation and is more widely in most of the provinces. You can see the rider, even the passenger, no one has got helmet on him. And that's what it is. And on this research, it was said that the typical mode of transportation, motorcycle-related happening, fatality resulting motorcycle traffic accidents, and the perceived level of risk associated with motor taxi as a form of transportation. And according to this survey, taxi are the most popular means of transportation, 84%, but followed by motorbike taxi. And this one, it's one of the common accident I get even in my hospital. And on this slide, you can see this yellow bus. This is one of the transportation also is used, public transportation used. And you can see that person just standing a bit outside. We call them conductor. It's the one collecting money for the passenger who are inside. And he has to stand like that to look for other passenger who will use the same transport. And
he just drives on the back of the van.
Yes, it's the back of the van, and there's one on the side. And what is happening? You see, the time I was there in the Kansas, I went to the DMV. I did my test, the theory, and did the practice, and I got my license. But it's not the case here. Here, I can just from my office, they can bring for me a driving license. I don't need to go for the test. Yes. And most of these gentlemen are driving. They don't know anything about road sign. They don't know anything about the rule in the road. They just know how to drive. And this is one of also the main cause of accident. And on this last slide, this
Was
is
this built that way, or did it build? Was it built straight and then it started to lean?
Yes, it was straight, and it started to lean. Actually, this happened. Actually, the time I was in Kansas, I was just following the news. It was happening, and it started to lean. And this happens when you do anarchic construction, and even people who are involved in this construction, they are not qualified. And we have got many of these cases, and this one is also one of the main cause of trauma and injuries in Africa. I think that's
One of
what
the
I can
more
say.
one of the more common traumas I can remember treating when I was in Africa was some type of building collapsing on someone. I just found it was so interesting.
Yes, but recently, as I said, actually, motorbike accident is becoming very common because most of the companies in a rural area, in big city, they are now using motorbike. I think because people, they can move fast because you are not trapped in the traffic jams and everything. But most of, actually, I can say majority of this one who use those motorbikes.
Whoever has to go, yeah. Don't be
Yes.
late to class. Thank you for coming, guys. Hey, Patrick, I just have to make sure I get the medical students out of here so they don't get in trouble. Ah, darn it. Okay, that's okay. All right. See you guys. We still have some people here, so we'll keep going, Patrick. But thank you all for coming. Okay. Hey, Patrick.
Yes.
Sorry, I just had to let him go. Oh, anything else you wanted to say?
No, what I wanted just to say that there are several reasons for the widespread use of motorbike as a form of public transport, because there's a traffic jams which we avoid, and there's the deterioration of state of some roads which are not good. I think that's why it spread like that, but without rule, without road code, that's actually is leading to a lot of fatality, a lot of trauma. I think that's what I can say in conclusion.
Well, that was great. And then before we start our big discussion, I just want to show one more thing. So what is jointly contributing to death and disability due to trauma from road traffic accidents and work-related injuries in Africa? And it's a lack of this post-crash care that's available. And so I just want to, this is Dr. Bezos Hospital, and this is Dr. Solomon walking me through the emergency department. And I just want you to listen to how long people have been waiting there for care.
Starting from this is a whole patient and ortho patient.
This is your orthopedic
Yeah, orthopedic patient.
emergency ward,
Yeah,
and all these people are waiting for surgery.
yeah, waiting for surgery. You can talk.
And they're all,
Yeah,
these are
all-
all like
all
femur fractures.
femur fracture, pilum fracture,
fractures.
pelvic fracture, every fracture.
How long,
Huh?
how long have they been here? Some of them.
more than 20 days, 30 days.
than
We can
20
ask them. ለስንት ጊዜ ነው የቆያችሁት እዚህ እናንተ? ለስንት ጊዜ ቆይታችኋል ሆስፒታል ውስጥ? For how long they keep here? ለስንት ጊዜ ቆይታችኋል?
ለምሳሌ አንድ ሰው እኔ 15ኛ
15 days? 5 days? ሌላስ? 4 days? 22 days?
22 days.
Yeah. This one, a surgeon came from America, so he wants to see something. ከአሜሪካ ነው የመጡት አንዳንድ ነገር ማየት ፈልገው ነው እንትን ለማለት
22 days, what does he have?
ምንድን ነው ስብራቱ? ሜቢ ራዲያል ነርቭ ፍራክቸር።
Okay.
ኦኬ ከ22 ቀን በላይ አለ እዚህ ላይ ከ22 ቀን more than 22 days 15 days more than እሺ ቱ መንዝስ he came for checkup.
የተባለው ከዛ እንትን ሰርጀሪ መደረግ አለ።
ኦኬ ምንድን ነው ስብራቱ? ምን
I think you get the point. Somebody waiting in an emergency department for 2 months. Can you imagine when you guys go through your emergency department rotation, and somebody says they've been waiting a long time, just think about this person was there for 2 months. I mean, it's just hard to imagine. It's hard to wrap your head around. So, there's the point is you need to have well thought out, well designed and laid down and maintained transportation networks. You need to have responsible businesses that make safe working environments for their employees. Patrick, all that copper that was in all those sacks, is that used in Africa?
Actually, what did you say? That the copper does what? Sorry.
Yeah, are those Africans that are mining that copper? Are they using it for industry in Africa that's then utilized in Africa?
No, they are not utilized in Africa.
Where is it going?
In Africa, it's just production, or you just product, but to go and make them in final use, it's done abroad,
where you really make the money out of it. And we're going to talk about this. You'll see, we're going to talk about this when we get more into the economics of trauma. But the cheapest part of the global supply chain is pulling it out of the ground. And so what happens is, the cheapest reimbursement, the most dangerous part of the job, pulling it out of the ground, that's occurring in Africa. Then it actually goes somewhere else, and we'll talk through this whole thing. And when you turn it into something, that's when you actually make profit off of it. So it comes out of the ground and immediately gets out of Africa. It's just an important thing to note. Yet, so who's benefiting from it are richer nations, but they have no health care. They have no health care. So anyway, I just think it's an important point to make, how we're, and I think if most people were aware of that, they would not tolerate it. So, well, let's open it up for discussion. We have some people here that might have some questions. We have a nice panel here. Lori has traveled extensively with us throughout Africa. Nicole's like our safety expert on transportation networks. Dr. I believe is still on, and Dr. Kind is here as well. So yes.
So in the U.S., if like a pedestrian just jumps in front of my car, gets hit, I probably can get away from some like legal ramifications from that. But one of my awareness I kind of level with, if it's my negligence and I hurt somebody, it could be financial or criminal charges. Does that play a role in Africa, or how much, or not at all as far as your awareness?
Dr. Kind, Dr. Basie, did you hear that question? He basically said if somebody strikes a pedestrian in the United States, there's usually some type of legal consequence, particularly if it's the fault of the driver. Does that happen in Africa?
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I mean, if there is if a driver hit a pedestrian, or there is always a legal consequence. In fact, usually if you hit a person or a pedestrian, irrespective of whose fault is it, usually the driver is the one who's going to be punished off. The legal part in terms of injuring someone is pretty high. There will be legal consequences, of course, just like in any other country.
Yeah, I think even here, whenever you hit, that's why we have most of the cases of hit and run, because what happened after hitting a pedestrian, definitely either the pedestrian was at fault or not, you are going to cover the bill. of that. Definitely, that's how it works. And when it happens, it's some certain cloudy area, like some remote area, to avoid to be beaten or by the population there, you have to take the person you have hit and take to the hospital just for your safety, because people that are beat, once you do that, they can even destroy your car and everything in some certain area where there are not too much rules. But definitely you have to cover the bill of the person you are with. That's why you have too many cases of hit and run.
Wow. Okay. Any other questions? Lori, you've been with the any from the work related injury standpoint, the injuries you saw, or in terms of traffic there compared to here. I'm just curious.
When I immediately when you get in your vehicle to go to where you're going out of the airport, I mean, it's just like a totally different world. It's completely different. There's cars everywhere. Like, it's exactly like what it looks like. It's not just like a congested area. That's just what it's like. And it's a big city. It's a really big city. I remember one time we were going from one side of the city to the other, and it took, I don't know, like 2 hours.
Yeah.
It took forever to get from one side of the city, and because the city major shop, and going back here, even going, you kind of like get used to it when you're there, and you get used to being a pedestrian. And then I remember like I can just walk in the street, like on this crosswalk, and there's not so many cars, and
Right.
you get into like a different kind of state of mind when you're in that environment of like so much traffic and people everywhere. And then when we have fellows come here, they kind of report the same thing, only in like, where's all why there's so much road traffic. Immediately you see just these buildings that are half built. They're all over. You see these buildings that are half built with this bamboo scaffolding, and it's not safe, and it looks terrifying, and it's many stories high. These are very tall buildings. These are not just 3-4 stories high. They're 8 stories high. They're very high. So it's actually surprising we didn't see more. And then in that respect, kind of going back to not having the healthcare, the other thing that you see there that you don't see here is that you see people just walking around with injuries that you just don't see that here. You see people who just simply can't get care, and they're trying to live their life, and you see them on the road and in their community, which you just don't see that here at all, because we have proper treatment. So,
and here's a follow-up to that question. So knowing that what you just said, Addis Ababa in particular, what we're talking about, it's a bigger city population-wise than Kansas City. But do they have the nursing personnel for a post-crash response like we have in Kansas City?
Oh, no, definitely not. There's just simply not enough. I mean, you looked at the emergency room, nobody's getting care. And in fact, the cultural system is just different there too. And in fact, a lot of times the families are part of the care team. There might be like a single nurse in that ER, maybe 1 or 2, and same with on the floor units. And oftentimes, kind of what Patrick was saying is like, these people have to get to work, right, every day. So you have that aspect too, that these people have a job, which is wonderful, and they have to get to work every day, and it's treacherous for them to even get to work. And then not only that, but this kind of limited resource of like a human resource as a nurse, these people have to stay there days on end. Oftentimes they work 24 hours, multiple days in a row. So the way their culture is set up too is just that they could be going from their home to the hospital, and it's a far distance and it's not safe. So they'll be there in these kind of 24-hour shifts, which is unusual compared to here where we actually get rest. So they're working around the clock, giving care to these people. Yeah, but it's definitely not enough, not even by a landslide.
Yeah, so go for it, Dr. Beza. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Abbott Hospital by itself is like the first trauma center that we have, and it was just built just having the concept of managing traumas. It's just we're just moving in a baby steps. I mean, we didn't ever have a trauma center before. We don't even have these paramedics. Like if there's any injury, or a crash, or like some sort of mass casualties, we don't have a team to go and you know do the field work and bring the patient to the hospital and following those steps. So we don't have those things, but we're trying. I mean, the Ministry of Health in Ethiopia is trying to build a system, um, like to have a field work, before the patients are brought into the hospital, like trying to train paramedics and having these trained personnel and went to trauma site and deal, give them, life-saving uh, 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 procedures like, resuscitating them and bring patients which can be saved to the hospital, things like that. But if you ask me, we don't have those things before. Um, and we are just trying to have and trying to build such a system. And that's why Abbott was built in the first place, trying to manage trauma. But we've seen it, and it's just, I mean, um, hampered by a lot of problems, and like we don't have much of a space, trained personnel, and also the equipment to manage those patients. So it's starting to fail. Even it starts to fail before it is being starting. So there are a lot of challenges, but these are the things that need to be worked on and improve the patient's outcome. Um,
Yeah, so kind of what Baze is saying too is that, so when they come into Abbott Hospital, for example, there's not like the triage system is based off of, like really truly, so many people are just going to get turned away basically. And they have a different way of triaging, and we would have a different way of triaging here. And we have a whole trauma network. So if we can't take a patient, they could go somewhere else. And that's just not at all what happens there, because sometimes maybe they're even being brought in by a family member. There's not like the trauma activation where there's like a communication of who's taking who and whatever else. So they could just walk in the door and most likely are going to get either sat in a waiting room for days on end or go put on a waiting list.
First, thank you for your thought. But so I was just thinking, like, with how overwhelming this topic can be and kind of like the doom and gloom in a way of like what we're learning about, that it's obviously very multidisciplinary. So I was wondering for us as medical students, if that's like mainly who's left in the room, what I can see, how can we end up getting involved in what you guys doing and what I
So thank you so much, Taylor. Yeah, the point is, one of the reasons why I structured this talk was when you look at what the major causes of trauma are, you will get a response from governments and non-governmental organizations that our thrust needs to be purely on road safety. But it's so much more than that. And it also, I was laying it up, and then you just asked that question. And the point is, the infrastructure in Ethiopia in particular, if you look at the hospital, Abbott, their one trauma center, would not even be adequate for Kansas City, where we have well-designed roads, where we have law enforcement, where we have safe signage and all these things. They don't even have enough to handle what trauma Kansas City would produce. So we're healthcare practitioners, and we have an ability to have an impact there. Because why? Because this university has a relationship with St. Paul's Millennium Medical College, which Dr. Beza receives his appointment from, and with Dr. Kinder's Hospital. And so Dr. Kinda's hospital accepts medical students from KU to there, and medical students also travel to Abbott. Research is conducted there, and the research that is done there is meaningful. Laura Jackson, led a team over the 4 years. She's a medical student getting ready to graduate. She was able to publish a paper with Dr. Kinda there in Zambia about outcomes of trauma patients in public versus private hospitals, which is key to helping us make an impact. So just number one, just by involvement and working with us and doing away rotations and doing research, that one thing, you don't have to operate, you can just help gather data that can then be used to improve trauma care. So you have an impact. I just cannot, Laura's work and Lexi's work has been huge and will have a huge impact. Just to use I could talk about this so much, but I just want to use an analogy. If you think about the HIV epidemic, one of the most important things that was figured out in turning around the AIDS epidemic was the fact that a lot of the public hospitals were not necessarily treating patients, but they were spreading the disease. The public trauma center in Zambia, where we did the study, they have over a 60% complication rate from their surgeries. That's not solving the problem. You can't just throw down a trauma center and cheaply equip it. You need to bring that to light. And so had she not done that study, that wouldn't have been brought to light. That came out of KU. So anyway, you guys can have such a huge impact. And then this shapes your career. You guys get involved in this, it's going to shape your career and how you treat your patients, whether you go into orthopedics or whether you go into trauma or not. It will flavor everything you do in your practice. So that's how. Great question. Any other? Did you want to comment on that, Lori?
Yeah, I'll just say too, I think as healthcare practitioners, like you were saying, it'll shape your career. I think whatever you go into, you can look at it as a global practice, because I think we have a duty here. I think when we come down to it, we have a duty to think about our practice globally. So I think with that in mind, whatever you go into, kind of see what is happening, in the world at large, and kind of keep your hand on that pulse as you do your career. I think that's super important.
Patrick, Dr. Kinda, Dr. Beza, you guys want to say anything to our medical students in terms of how they can have an impact?
Yeah, if you think about it, like these all road traffic accidents, work-related injuries in Africa in general that happens, it's all connected. This lecture, I love this lecture. It's so informative. There is so much things that I don't know about roads and road safety that it's so informative. I like this lecture today, Dr. Edmonds. And having said this, it's all connected. If you think about it, these traumas which are related to road traffic accidents, work-related injuries, they are, we all connected in a way, like raw materials, going out from Africa to, the Westerners, and because of these things, because of the injuries, we don't have these adequate health systems to cover. But what can we do about this? About these things? After all, we don't know how. We don't do things to change the policies like work-related injuries and road traffic injuries, prevent those things. But as a health professional, what we can do is we are obliged to help those people who are injured and trying to create awareness that these injuries are becoming epidemic in everywhere, especially in Africa. And healthcare is a human right, and as a health professional, we have a duty to help these people, because at the end of the day, we are also part of the community. We can have those injuries in a way the other people have these injuries. So and trying to study them and bring out the information to the world, trying to create awareness. That's how we we can produce an impact, and that's for example, our organization is doing all these things like the lectures, the documentaries, trying to create an awareness and trying to bring the help that we needed. So I think everyone has a responsibility as a medical students or the physicians uh, to serve a human in general. So it's all impactful. That's what I want to say.
Yes, I think what I can say after all these lectures we are doing to give awareness about what's happening, about trauma in different ways, I think is to come to a conclusion, which is a solution, how to come out of this. And as we mentioned, talking about HIV and whatever, I think governments have been involved in that, just to make that work. Because the work to do here, it's huge. It's quite huge, and population actually, they don't even know that this trauma epidemic exists, but it's there. I just wish, because recently there was this mutual understanding which was signed in between the American government and the DR Congo government to solve this issue of war, because they promised that we are going to give peace in in return. I think they will have more to exploit those minerals, but I don't really know what's more details about that. But I wish that in this understanding, when they talk about peace, even this health and specifically this trauma epidemic can come to be known and to work on, because as I said, the work is huge, and it's really going to need involvement of people who can make decision for us to come out of this. I think that's what I can say about this. Thank you.
That's so good. You guys make a difference. Academic institutions change culture, and culture moves government. And Patrick, you're exactly correct. I mean, I think we know that deal that was signed with the DR Congo it's the most mineral rich part of the world. Everybody needs the resources out of the DR Congo, for these renewable technologies that we want to develop. But to say a little more to our medical students, I'll say this. Dr. Beza, Dr. Kenda, both of your institutions have hosted KU students, and you have been the best hosts. And you guys both, you welcome our students, and we appreciate that. So I would just put out to the students, on your end, we're getting such involvement. Could you take more students? Can you answer that than you already take? Or is that something you'd have to look at since we're here? We're having kind of an informal discussion, but if you could, don't answer that. I won't have you answer that. But what I would say is one thing that could be done is there is a fund. It's the African Trauma Initiative Endowment. And the more money we put into that, the more students we can send. So, right now there's kind of a limited capacity, but it would be nice to send more students than we send. So, or to have more trips than we send. And you guys only have so many opportunities to go on trips. But I'll throw that out there to you, because that is something that is kind of in your court. If you guys wanted to raise money and put that into your endowment, that money could be earmarked for student trips, and we could send more than we currently do. And that would just help foster more research and deepen the relationship. So.
I mean, definitely we welcome anyone who comes and visit my institution. I mean, it's a privilege, Dr. Eden, working with the KU for us, and yeah, I mean, we are more than happy to host a lot of students. Everyone is welcome.
There you go. Arms open wide. So it works. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Beza. you make us better physicians. And you also, I will tell you from my standpoint, you know, in a system that is so heavy focused on profit, which is important, you cannot run a healthcare system without thinking about the money, and we need to. But it is nice to step out of that and to be able to focus on something that is altruistic. And not only that, you know, if you're here, everybody here has some degree of privilege, at least the privilege of education. And knowledge is a lot of power. And if you have that privilege, you should do something good with it. I think everybody here would agree with that. And this is an opportunity to use this knowledge that you're getting and the skills you're getting for good. So, well, thanks everyone so much. Nicole, thank you for making the trip. And the next lecture we do will be on conflict-related violence and self-harm. That one gets a little bit serious, but I think it's something we have to talk about to fully understand the trauma epidemic. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
We always end up in
Yeah.
place where
Everybody has more to talk about this time.
always
Like there's a lot of work going into post-crash care in the US too.
Oh, tons. Yeah.
Like they're looking at like a lot of like blood products